Pay close attention. What you're seeing today is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Examining the news as it relates to Bible prophecy, Qatar President Medvedev not too pleased right now with the recent moves of the United States to position their missile defense that close to Russia's borders.
That's right, Jeff. You know, they say there's no honor amongst thieves. I guess there's no honor amongst two countries that have thousands of missiles capable of destroying with nuclear capabilities. Now, in a recent statement by President Dmitry Medvedev, Russia has threatened to pull out of the Strategic Nuclear Arms Treaty, or the START Treaty for short, and stop its nuclear disarmament program, due in part to the United States' plans to deploy its missile defense system in Europe. Now, this new treaty, START Treaty, was signed in April of 2010, if you remember. And the reason for the deployment of America's missile defense system is in an attempt to protect the United States' interests militarily from Iran and other rogue nations who might seek a missile attack against America. In addition to Russia's threat, they also announced that they ordered military commanders to prepare for the deployment of nuclear-capable short-range ballistic missiles to Kaliningrad on the Polish and Lithuanian border, as well as other areas of its border, in order to secure its ability to take out any part of the U.S. missile defense system in Europe.
Now, Medvedev is wanting a legal guarantee from the United States that its missile defense system is not aimed at Russian targets. Again, the United States insists that its missile defense system is only aimed at Iranian targets and other so-called rogue nations.
Now, Russia also said that if the actions of the United States continues, it might withdraw from the newly signed START II treaties, but that it's not closing the doors on open dialogue with the United States, and it expects reasonable and constructive approaches from their Western counterparts. Now, with the impending threats of war and the mindset of every nation for itself, not even two superpower members of the quartet can trust each other in regards to its own attempts to guard itself from the attacks from other nations.
Well, we also see tensions increase this week between Iran and the West, when hundreds of Iranian demonstrators stormed two British diplomatic buildings in Tehran. Demonstrators smashed windows, burned the British flag, and ransacked offices at the British embassy. Now, these protesters clashed with riot police and shouted, "The embassy of Britain should be taken over," and "Death to England." Now, although Iran's foreign ministry expressed regret for the, quote, unacceptable behaviors by some demonstrators, British Prime Minister David Cameron called the events outrageous and indefensible. The failure of the Iranian government to defend British staff and property was a disgrace, he said in a statement. The Iranian government must recognize that there will be serious consequences for failing to protect our staff. We will consider what these matters should be in the coming days, he stated. Now, British Foreign Secretary William Hague said, "The idea that the Iranian authorities could not have protected our embassy or that this assault could have taken place without some degree of regime consent is fanciful." That statement came after the Iranian diplomats were given 48 hours to leave Britain. Now, foreign ministers will be meeting in the next few days to discuss their next moves, but tougher sanctions on Iran are very likely. Now, Katan, this incident, along with all the other incidents that have recently taken place in the Middle East, are lining up exactly with what Yishra Hawkins has been teaching for 40 years now, that a nuclear war will start in and around that great river Euphrates, killing a third of men over that fourth part of the earth. And from there, it's going to escalate into a global nuclear war.
And that's exactly what we're looking at there, Jeff, a big-time war that's getting ready to take over the whole nation.
So what type of scenarios are we looking as this war begins?
Well, as we reported before, concerning the turmoil in the Middle East, Israel's plans to engage preemptively against Iran's nuclear facilities is still an option that's on the table. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netenyahu, said that the greatest danger facing Israel and the world is the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran. Now, analysts say if a war between Israel and Iran were to launch, it could develop into a fully fledged war that could burn the whole region. A region, by the way, that makes up 6% of the world's population and accounts for 20% of its armed conflicts. Now, Israel has at least two options it might use to attack Iran. Now, Plan A. Israel launches a limited surgical preemptive military strike attacking with long-range aircraft and armed drones, firing cruise missiles from its submarines in the Arabian Sea, or it might launch its latest Jericho-3 missiles. Now, but the Iranians, they're a little bit wiser than they were a few years ago, and they have spread their nuclear facilities all across the country. So in this scenario, Israel would actually have to hit 7 different nuclear facilities, but they wouldn't be able to inflict long-term or permanent damage. And as of course, in response, Iran would have to attack Israel, and they would retaliate, making every Israeli and U.S. ally in the region a potential target. Syria could join in, and Iran's proxy forces in Lebanon, which is Hezbollah, would launch rockets into Israel, as well as the possibility of unconventional attacks on Israeli interests across the globe. Now, Plan B, on the other hand, the United States enters into the war games, protecting its interests in the Middle East and its push for obtaining Iran. The first order on the agenda, cyber warfare, which they recently attempted. Stage 2 will be massive ordnance air blast, or MOAB, or mother of all bombs as they're commonly known, the largest conventional weapons that the United States has that's non-nuclear, along with a new generation of bunker busters. Now, America's strike on Iran would be neither limited or surgical, being able to attack over 10,000 different targets overnight, destroying all Iranian land and sea bases, as well as destroying all known nuclear facilities, leaving Iran in flames. In any of these cases, of course, if the U.S. or Israel were to hit Iran's nuclear facilities, any facility that was going full steam, it would create a giant, dirty bomb.
Almost as if a nuclear bomb went off.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And the results would be between 1 to 2 million Iranian civilians dead. Now, Iran would launch everything it had into Israel and Afghanistan. U.S. would ask its NATO allies, Turkey, Russia, and China to join in, and the resulting conflicts would spark more conflict throughout the globe, causing uprisings and more deaths. Also, don't forget about the surging oil prices that would drive the global economy into chaos. Now, as far as I can see from what we've been reporting on and what we've been seeing in the news, none of the leaders of these countries are actually truly working to bring forth the peaceful solution. In fact, they're moving in a direction that's going to drive both them and their nations into the brink of total destruction.
All right. Thanks, Katan. We'll pay close attention to what's coming up next. Yisrael Hawkins explaining how Bible prophecy is being fulfilled. For YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for joining us.